time to start our study session. I'll call us to order, and Summer, if you'll call roll.
Commissioner Patterson?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Baker is not here. Commissioner Roberts?
Here.
Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr is not here, and Mayor Mason.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. At the Commissioner's request, discuss any items of concern on the regular session agenda. Anybody have anything? Morale, I had just a couple of things. Give me just a second. Let me find them. Yeah, over on 8.11 on the consent items, where we're talking about the sewer bid out to the industrial park. And
That's correct.
so I was just curious, if we go back and we add in the water lines that we did, the sewer line, where does that line up in our 15.8 million ARPA funds?
So these two together, it's about 13 millions,
Okay.
plus or minus round numbers. So we got next commission meeting or the following commission meeting, we are going to bring in another change order for 2.1 million for phase 2 of the water line project. So we are going to spend every dime of that project.
Okay.
That money, so we are not going to left any money. But we were, the reason why we did not do phase 2 of the project is sewer is the biggest chunk of the main project. So that's why we wanted to wait, make sure we can serve the whole sites with the sewer, make sure we don't want to over budget it. So on the water side, we try to make it minimum. Then we come back and do the sewer. Now we got money left over, almost $2 million. We'll come back and finish the other portion of the water line project.
Okay, and that piece of the water line project will take that water south? Is
That's
that what I'm
correct. We are
understanding?
going to loop that line
Okay.
so that it's going to be completely looped water system.
Okay. Do you feel like we'll have to put much money with that amount, or do you think it's all going to be those ARPA funds? Or you won't know until you get the final bids in?
That's,
Yeah,
I think,
that one.
I think like after phase 2, I think there is another $300,000 to $400,000 still in the budget. So we got another year to finish all the projects before we do anything. Like, because I know there is a complexity of this project. So the sewer is almost like 20 to 30 feet deep. So there are some unknowns. I think I would like to reserve some funds until I finish that project.
Okay, okay.
So to get you the answer, yes, I think we are not planning to use city funds at this time.
Okay. And then the other piece I wanted to know on that, I know we're on a timeline of December of 2026 to have that completed. You feel good about that still?
Just to be FYI, it's a June 2026, sir.
It's when?
June 2026,
Oh, June?
yes.
Really? I thought it was December.
I thought the same thing too, but our grants writer mentioned, hey, it's a June 2026.
So let me ask my question again. You feel okay that Luck and Bill can get this in by then?
Yes,
And-
yep. I did have a conversation before I am awarding the project, so they said they are confident enough to do it. So they are going to bring in 3 crews, so they are going to get the project done.
Okay, all right, good. We have all those easements and everything purchased and,
Yeah, we got one more easement, but that's not going to, in fact, complicate our project.
okay,
Well, it's highly likely to spend all the 15.8 or whatever the number is that we'll have to spend some city money, but it shouldn't be very much. In other words, it will likely be impossible to spend exactly 15.8, but we're going to spend all that 15.8 plus whatever. So I think there's one change order coming, right, on the, as you just talked about, on the water line.
Yep.
That's going to connect into the water line south of Garriott.
Yep, all the way to like near 66th and about a half mile south of Market.
And that will use it all, but a few $100,000 you said that you're retaining for contingency purposes?
That is
which
correct, yes.
We're very likely to have, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Or Yeah, in any event, I feel fairly confident. I feel very confident we're going to get it done. I'm glad to know that June is the absolute deadline.
Right.
Okay, I think that was my only question on those consent items. Okay, anybody else have any questions on that? No? All right, with that being said, I'll move on to 3.1, discussion and update on the recent visit to the Elk City Sports Complex. Gerald, I'll let you start on
Yeah,
that.
so I'll go ahead and kick it off. Just to recap for everybody, a group from the city, a group of about, I think it was about 12 people or so, went on what I call a field trip to Elk City, particularly to take a look at what they have, which was identified by HAF, our consultant, as a good comparison to what we're talking about trying to build. They have two fiveplexes. One is, go ahead and hit the next slide for me. Yeah. There shows one fiveplex, and I think that may be the one that, the baseball one that has some T-ball fields on it. We went and took a look at that. These are older fields that were built, I would say, I don't know the exact time frame when they were built, several years ago, but most recently, they spent some money from a tax that they have, a sales tax, to improve all the fields with all artificial turf on the infield or the outfield. So where you see where it looks like dirt there, that's also artificial turf that's painted to look like dirt. And they were very nice. It had just rained a whole lot the day before, and there was hardly any rain puddles at all on the fields. It's been a constant problem with where we're at. Obviously, wear and tear is lessened on grass. It's difficult to sustain a high volume of traffic, particularly when it's wet and muddy. You can do that with artificial turf, although artificial turf does have a wear-out date. And, I don't remember what they talked about, 10 years or something like that. But they had two fiveplexes. One was for softball, one was for baseball. And as you can see, and that's a good picture of one, there's a big building in the center that had the concessions, it had the bathrooms, it actually had a seating area, but I didn't look like they really used it a lot for seating in there because people would sit outside. They had a little bit of storage in there as well, and that's how they met the needs of that fiveplex. And then not too far, a walk across a big parking lot was the other fiveplex. So these are some pictures that Scott took, and I think that we might have gotten off the website. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There's a picture of the parking. I do not have any idea how many vehicles they have or how many spots they have, but it was a lot. But you can see with what's going on right there, they filled up a lot of those spots. They've centrally located a lot of their facilities there with other athletic venues and recreation buildings. So there is, and there's also, I believe it was an elementary school or something close to it. So there's a lot of parking available. This is just the common parking between the two fiveplexes. I want to say on that trip, Mayor, you went, Aaron, Morali, Scott, you, let's see, myself, and gosh, I'm forgetting everybody else that went, but there were several other folks, Rob Houston, Corey, Jessica from our team, James Hazard from HAF was there. Elk City was a very gracious host. I think they're about a town of about 12,000, and they have a lot of nice stuff. I will tell you they're way, way out there on I-40. If you're going that far, you might end up going on into Texas, but for their nice facilities, which is good places to eat, and they're doing a lot of renewal in their town. There's some, they've got some highways through town they're reworking. So there was road construction, but when I see road construction, I always think about this town's got it going on because they're fixing stuff. And but we went for the ballparks. We spent the whole day. Their city manager, Tom Ivester, has been the city manager for several years there now. They had already built these ballparks originally when he came in, but they just did the, I believe the artificial turf, was it last year, Scott? Sometime soon, recently.
2019, I think.
It was 2019, okay. And so he talked a little bit from his perspective. I think he took over either 19 or 20. He was telling the story. In any event, Mayor, you got to meet the mayor of Elk City there as well. He came and stopped by. I will tell you, they rolled out the red carpet for us, so we appreciate their hospitality. And they did mention they might want to come see our soccer fields someday because they've heard about our advanced soccer park, courtesy of the generosity of Mr. Paul Allen and his family and the other donors, and a little bit from the city. So anyway, that was great. That was my perspective. Mayor, you and some others may want to talk about what you saw. And there's some other pictures if you want to scroll through them.
So they were telling me that way back in the 80s, the city manager that had been there years ago went out there and managed to convince everyone to buy a pretty good chunk of land that they felt like they could put some sporting facilities as well as a school out there. So this is something that was started back in the 80s, and then they built the ball fields. I think it was like 97, they said. So they've been there quite some time. So long that they call them the fiveplex. Everybody refers to it that way, but each one of them are eightplexes because they've got the 3 small t-ball fields out at the end, but everyone still refers to it the same as fiveplex. On the parking, which parking's always a problem. I mean, we're going to have that issue when we build this ballpark because it's right next to the soccer park that already doesn't have enough parking. I mean, they're parking too deep on the grass out there. And the comment I always hear is, well, we need to be close to the front gate. Folks, you can't have 1,200 cars all near the gate. And so that one parking lot they were showing right there had, I think it was 208 or 210 slots, but they had carryover with some additional parking slots. And they said that they fill those things up, including the school that's out there whenever they really have large tournaments. Even for Elk City, that I've got to think it'd be challenging to get people to drive that far out. They have tournaments that have 5,000 or 6,000 people come into town. I mean, it is substantial to the point that their concession stands, the way they're set up, they're run by adults. They do have some younger people working in there, but it is very organized when you go back in that concession area. Instead of selling, well, I don't know about bottles of water, but instead of selling the sodas in the bottles, what you do not have near the ROI on those that you do fountain drinks. They've put fountain drinks at every station that someone comes up. So it's easy. If they just want 2 drinks, they can fill those 2 drinks and move them right through. But they said that on any given day during tournament time, they're running $10,000 to $12,000 through just the concession stand. So it's substantial. The other thing I wanted to mention was that they, on the fields, the turf fields, and I know that's a high expense to start out with, but they never cancel, short of lightning, they never cancel tournaments. So when teams from a long ways away book hotel, they know unless it's lightning, they're going to have a tournament there. So they don't have to, if it rains the night before, they're still going to play. But they were showing us how, and I think it's the same thing kind of we do down here at David Allen. They have their areas on that turf that are super high use, the pitcher's mound. And they were showing me how they can take that whole pitcher's mound out, move it up, back, for different leagues or ages, but it can also just be replaced because it gets a lot of wear and tear when they come down on their foot. Same thing around the bases. If we do that correctly, we can cut that piece out and not have to replace all the turf. They like to tell you it's 10 years. The maintenance guy out there told me he thought on the outfields they were going to get closer to 17 to 19 years possibly out of the outfields. The outfields looked really in good shape. You could see some wear and tear around the bases, but overall I was surprised for it to have been put in, be there as long as it was, to look as good as it did. They also had lots of shade. Every seating area was covered, not just for shade, but also for fly balls. Now the thing probably I didn't care for it is they didn't have a lot of room to warm teams up. And what I've always seen ever since my kids were little, they'll get out there in between where all the people are walking in and out and they're throwing that ball. And keep in mind, you've got 6-year-olds throwing a ball as hard as they can. It's goes left and right and up and down in every direction. I've seen a lot of people pegged, when that happens, can get hurt. So that's something I hope we can think about, have a place that teams can go warm up and not be throwing the ball around right in the general area. They also had put up, and I don't know, you can flip through those and see, this isn't the particular one I wanted you to see, but you see that QR code on the right. They had a big poster of that on the outside of the concession building, and you could go up to any one of those. One of them said hotels, one said restaurants, one said,
There's a menu.
a menu for the concession stand. So if you're there, your team's going to end up and play late, you thought you were going to go home, but you didn't, you can go up there, click on that, it'll show every hotel that wants to participate in that, so that they, where it's at, phone number, the whole deal. So, anyway, because we want this to be beneficial to all of our merchants also. I thought that was pretty clever. And then they did have some areas for the little kids to play. I don't know what our configuration will look like, but we hope to have that entire facility fenced in. One of my big concerns, having sons that were all 5 years apart, one could be playing in one area and another one in another area. And as a parent, you're just trying to keep an eye on everybody back and forth, back and forth. If we get that all fenced in, one, short of a small child going out the front gate, we should be able to control that. And number two, I've seen it before where they have nice playground areas, but they're fenced also. So mom, dad says, hey, stay inside of this where I can see you. Hopefully they will. And it'll just be safer. I think it'll make it better for the parents to be able to look out across there and be able to see little Cheryl running across there. So, was that all the slides?
I think so.
Who else? Scott, you were on that trip. What'd you see, or you think we can do better, or?
I thought they had a pretty good layout. Just like you said, make sure we have enough parking and make sure we've got restrooms and concessions taken care of.
The restrooms were very large, and they looked like you could come in and just wash them down real quick. I did like that.
I liked
So it cuts down on the maintenance.
I liked how in the center of the bleacher area they had just kind of a blank spot where if people want to bring their own chairs in.
Yes.
I think that was nice.
So, Morali, did you see anything that you liked or didn't like, or?
I think it is centrally located, so it's a one person, like security wise, so they can get everybody in one spot and get everybody in and go. And I think accountability wise, that might be pretty awesome.
Yeah. Overall, I thought it was a nice facility, but it's a lot better now since they've kind of revamped it and put some more money in it. And they did talk about, before they laid the turf, one of the largest expenses was getting all the drainage right. And I will say, when I looked out across there, those fields really slope off. And, when we get ready to do this, and I know you see it the same way, but we sure want to build it so that all the water runs away from those fields. And so.
I was imagining what it would look like at night, that first impressions picture. They had some kind of nice kind of downtown looking lamps along the main walkway. And I was thinking about how nice that would look at night, kind of to get your first impression when you walk in through the gate.
And that's one thing we've told HAF, that we want a wow factor when first time that someone shows up to our ballpark, to go, man, this is a great place to come play. So for those of you that don't know, this was our first trip that we've gone to actually just do research and look and see what we like, what we don't like, what we think we can do better. On May the 14th, we're going to have a town hall meeting. HAF will be here. We're going to have that at the the Stride
Stride Bank Center.
Bank Center. And it's open to the public. We want anybody that wants to have some input on this to please come and tell us. Now, I will remind you, every time you add something, it's more money, just more money. So, as our engineer tells us all the time, there's absolutely nothing we can't do with enough time and money. But we have to be able to pay for this thing. So, all that being said, we'd like to add the moon also, but it's got to fit within our budget. But we would like to see the general public there, kind of let half our engineering firm talk to them and explain why we're doing a few of the things that we're doing, and we want input. You might have seen something somewhere that we don't know about. One other thing I'll mention about this, they switched every one of their scoreboards over to Bluetooth, so that, you know, the big control boxes you used to see some teenager setting up in the stands working it and the score was never right. Now then, every bit of that, they log in and it's run right off their phone. So there's no more of those boxes. They were always breaking down. I personally like going without scoreboards. You know, a lot of places now actually it's just all on your phone. Tells who the runner is, tells everything about it. But we'll get to that at some point, I'm sure. So May the 14th, Stride Bank Center. Do we have a time on that?
Yeah, it's 5:30.
5:30. Encourage everybody to be there. And then on May the 27th,
28th.
28th, 29th, and 30th, our group's going to go down to Oklahoma City and then on to Dallas-Fort Worth and look at some stuff that's supposed to be very, very new. So I hope we'll be able to come back with great ideas, great concepts that we can build upon. So,
The public meeting is going to be the first of 3 public meetings, so hopefully you can make all of them. But this one is the first one, and the effort is to talk about where we're at. But really, the main effort is to solicit feedback from the public. So this is an opportunity for everybody to come in and tell us what you think and what you think needs to be included in the park. And then the teams going forward will put all that together and ultimately figure it out. So.
by the way, they were telling us, Mark Allen was telling us last week, the soccer tournament that they just had 1,800 rooms that were used over a 2-day period, sold out 7 hotels. So if you don't think that this has an impact, you know, and I don't think it matters if I share it, but they're wanting us to consider putting 3 more soccer fields in this thing because they think they can get up to tournaments with 125 soccer teams coming in. So if we want Enid to be the hub, it's very doable. We just have to make sure we do it correctly and do it well. Anything else, commissioners? Anybody?
Was this about a 3-year project for them to?
We've given them, from the time we signed that contract, we approved it, they've got 36 months to cut the ribbon on it.
We should be cutting a ribbon in February of '28, right, Morale?
Who do they have running the concessions and things like that?
Who did they have? They actually had a guy that his company had been downsized. You've heard of Swans before? They were downsizing, and he and his wife come in and are running that facility. So just how he has it lined up for the most efficiency to get product out, they looked at all the product, what to sell and what not to sell. There are some things every time you sell it, you lose money on it. I mean, why would you want to do that? So they've really researched that to make sure that they get the most return on investment on everything that they do. And then they also try to hire the same help every time. You know, and I know that's difficult, but so he and his wife have run it now for several years, and they used to have one truck, help me with this, one truck a week that would come in to bring in product for them, but they've grown that so big now, they're running 2 trucks every week to drop off product. So
They seem to have a good system, too. They didn't get into trying to do nachos or all kinds of stuff. They actually had, in another building, they had a cafe. So They weren't trying to be everything to everybody. They were looking for simple stuff, hot dogs, candy bars, and soft drinks, water, that kind of stuff. So,
Other questions? Nope. All right, I'm going to move on. Item 3.2, discussion of bid options for project number F-2301C- Waller Detention Pond and Drainage. Raleigh?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We have a project in our current bid, budget called Waller Detention Pond. So the project will provide a relief line, relief area to the line that's going to be draining to the Boggy Creek. The location of the detention pond is, this is Cleveland and Chestnut, just south of the new development right here. So we opened the bids for this project. The bids came out a little higher than what we expected. We were expecting that, but we wanted to see how much it's going to be higher. So the bid options were two options. One is a base bid. With the base bid is a dry detention, and option one or option two is wet detention. So to give some perspective on wet detention, you'll see water all the time. And a couple options we put, like a water fountain in the middle, just to give some aesthetics. The reason we did was this location is a prime area, and we wanted to give some character to that area. So some wet detention options. So this is a dry detention it looks like. So we received a few bids. The lowest responsible bidder, the base bid is $400,000, and the alternate is $600,000. So in our budget, we got $400,000. Just wanted to see the options moving forward.
to clarify, Morale, does that mean that if we got the wet detention, it'd be $1 million or just
That is correct.
600,000?
Yeah, it's $1 million
Okay.
So you add those two together.
together, yes. So, yep, it cost to make it pretty. So, just wanted to give you some options.
So we know this is an important area. It's a developing commercial area there at Cleveland and Chestnut. But the dollars were shocked us how much it is to have a nice feature like that. So, but since you've already got bids and are ready to go, we can go either way.
Yep.
In fact, if we can get an idea, some feedback, we're going to be bringing something back probably at the next meeting, right?
Next commission
To get it
meeting, yes.
awarded one way or the other.
Yep.
Why does that go up more than double just to have it water in it?
The dry detention is only 4.5 feet deep. When we add the wet detention, we are adding another 8.5 feet deep, because we wanted to make sure it's not going to be a mucky water, so it's going to be constant rotation and stuff like that. So
And there's a dry detention just north of the
yeah,
apartments.
not the complex, yes.
Is this going in behind the dollar
That's correct.
store
Yeah.
where all the pipe is stacked up?
But
It's right past it?
Just south of the drainage ditch right here, right? Go back to that location. Yep, the Dollar Tree is right here, and there is another property that's south of that.
Right, okay. All right.
Raleigh, what are we going to do with all that dirt we take out of there?
The contractor is going to haul it off. We gave the contractor option. He can do whatever.
We
he
probably have a use for that dirt, right? Is that one of the options we gave them? or-
Right.
Okay.
We'll take it at the landfill.
We're going to use the dirt, is that what you said? I couldn't.
Yes, I believe, don't we have a place to use the dirt, or am I wrong?
We gave the contractor option. He can do whatever he wants.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I would think he would go the lowest cost option. so-
Yeah, I think we have contact to this landowner right here, so he can use to stack all the dirt.
Gene Anderson's
Gene
area
Anderson.
where for future, okay.
Yep.
He needs a
But
lot of dirt.
yeah, but I'm not sure what he wants to do. So
Neither does he.
is there like a fountain or anything in that detention pond north of Walmart?
On the city portion, there is not, but there is a developer portion on the south side. There is a water fountain there. Between the, just north of the Walmart and between the, not between, just east of the apartment complex, there is a wet detention pond, and they do have a water fountain.
Have you looked at doing a hybrid like we did over there? Have part of it wet and part of it dry?
We looked into it. The area is so small.
Not functional?
Not functional. And especially the area is so sandy area, so it's going to be a...
Is it possible to start with the dry detention and then 5 years from now, if we want to make it bigger?
Definitely, I mean, yeah, it's not going to be closed, so.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good start. We'll give you a better idea where we're at on money here shortly, the next item. And I think that would be a wise thing to move forward. We need detention there. We could always do more. I think it just means you dig out more. But one thing that hit me is we have not been able to properly fund dredging and fixing Meadow Lake. To me, that would probably be a higher priority. $600,000 won't fix Meadow Lake, but that would help. But I think that's a good suggestion so that we can go ahead and get something awarded, is to start out with dry detention, and then if at some future point, how much deeper would you have to dig it?
Another 8 more feet.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'd find a place for that dirt too if we found the money, so.
It's not just the digging of it deeper. I'm assuming you have to put some kind of a spillway, right, that would hold that water in, and then when we had additional water, it'd go over the spillway, something like that?
That is correct, and also we are going to put a concrete wrap around, so it's not going to be washed out. So for the maintenance also, it's cheaper, so.
Well, it sure looked good as a water feature, but I sure don't want to spend $1 million on it. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. I was just wondering if that dirt might go where a ball field's going to go to build it up. But just a thought.
Right. We have dirt on the Chestnut, so Chestnut and Garland, when we dig the water line project, so we got a lot more dirt for our
Okay.
project, so.
You've already thought of that one?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Morale, who is MK Excavation?
These guys are from Stillwater.
Okay.
Yeah. They have done a lot of projects. So. Not for us, but they are local to Stillwater. They have done local projects.
Just, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah. They are new to Enid.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item 3.3, discuss the proposed 2025-2026 City of Enid budget. You got enough money in there for a water feature?
Evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is our first budget meeting for our 2025-2026 fiscal year.
I'll kick off and just say a few words, Jennifer. Every year, the budget is very difficult to put together, and the reason that it's difficult to put together is there are a whole lot of projects. There's more projects that we need and probably projects that we want than we have resources to pay for. In our city form of government and at our level, and I guess every level but the feds, we have to live within our means. So I'm very pleased with this budget that we put together. It is I think it's a charter responsibility of the city manager to prepare, well, not to prepare it, thank you, Jennifer and Aaron and your team, but to present it or get it to you, and this is how I do it with wonderful staff. But it did take some work. We always have millions more. I think we were about, combined in a couple of funds, about $10 million off on this originally. So through a lot of effort, looking at projects, making choices that we thought aligned with what the commission was wanting to do, looking at our revenue sources and everything else we could look at, I feel really good about where we're at. So I'm excited about the news here that you're going to share with us. However, it isn't a perfect budget. It never is. And so there may be things, we may have left something out that's a priority for you guys. As we go through it, feel free to ask questions. You should know, this is probably the most, in my opinion, probably the most important thing that you get to be a part of, because as you already know, what gets budgeted has a high probability of getting done. If you don't get it budgeted, we can sit around and want to do something all day long, but we're probably not going to get it done because we got to have funds to do it. So this is really good, and I know Jennifer's going to be wonderful in taking us through this. However, if you have any questions at any time, feel free. Jennifer's a veteran of 25 years or something. She's done a lot of budgets, so she knows a lot about it. But collectively, we've got the people here to answer the question or get the answer. So thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Okay, we're going to start with, we are under the Municipal Budget Act, and these are the rules that we have to follow to be a part of that. And state statute is Title 11, Section 17. So because of these rules, we presented to the governing body April 28th our draft budget. We plan on having the budget hearing on May 13th, which is our following Tuesday. Budget advertisement happened on May 3rd. And we're asking for consideration of approval, if ready, on May 20th, the following Tuesday. The reason we pushed this back 30 days is because if you don't, we have to have it approved by 7 days prior. And if you approve it and don't have an emergency resolution, then you don't spend money until that 30 days is up. So we always try to have it approved in May, and that way we won't have that kind of an issue. The sections of the budget book start with the board and commissions page. Then we have an organizational chart, table of contents, budget message from the city manager, which will be in after the budget approval. We have budget summaries. Following state statute, we have 3 years of data on those budget summaries, which when we have the new approved draft, you'll have color pages, and those will be what we call our blue pages. Then we have general fund budgets, the remaining governmental and proprietary funds, which those pages are in pink, or will be in pink, because you do not have color pages today. And then the trust authorities, which will be green pages, and then the capital improvement program from engineering, and those will be our yellow pages. This is our budget summary, which is page 14 of the draft budget. This is kind of our, what we call our go-to page. This shows pretty much in a pinch what everything that we need to know that we need quickly. And it shows you projected, what we think the projected fund balance will be before we start the year, our projected budgeted revenue and budgeted expenses, what we're proposing, and then, of course, what the projected fund balance will be after the end of fiscal year 26. So we have a proposed budget with $190.4 million in budgeted revenue, $190.9 million in budgeted expenses. So we have an overall deficit of only $471,000. This is an increase of budgeted revenue about $10 million from what we had for fiscal year 25, and an increase in budgeted expenses of about $10 million. So as we go through, we will get detail on several of these areas, and then of course any questions you have during the time, just go ahead and ask at that time. This is the same page, but we look at it a little differently. This is what we call our consolidated budget summary. And this looks at everything without transfers. So, for example, we're going to look at our revenue for general fund, and that's without the EMA transfer as an operational transfer back from EMA to the general fund. So this is basically all the money that we literally have. This has no transfers in it. So the original budget of 190 would be reduced to the 115.7 in revenue and 116.2 million in expenses. This is an overview of our budgeted revenue. Our main sources of revenue are general fund, which is our sales tax. That's in blue. And our utility fees, which go to EMA, which is Enid Municipal Authority, in red. And all other revenues are shown in green. So you can see sales tax and utility fees are our big revenue sources. This is our revenue by type. So you can see the sales and use tax in blue covers 38% of our entire revenue. Utility fees cover 36% of our entire revenue. And the total just between those two is $85.9 million. So then we have a utility fee breakdown. So within that 36%, we have water at 23 million, wastewater at almost 10 million, solid waste at 6.6 million, stormwater at 2.1 million, and then the rest of us miscellaneous at 350,000. And other types of revenue, we have grants, which is the green on the left side at 7%. We have about 7.6 million budgeted in grants. We have the Stride Bank Center in purple. That's about 2%, 2.6 million. We have Woodring Airport, which is the light blue, for 2.2 million or 2.6 million. That's about 2% of our total revenue. And then the orange is our TIF and EEDA revenue at 2.7 million. Franchise fees is 2.8 million, which covers about 2.5%, which is in the dark blue on the far top left corner. So our remaining revenues, which is the very top center of 10%, is 11.4 million, and that's our hotel tax, interest, golf, gasoline tax, fines, fees, permits, and things like that.
Jennifer, I have a question for you.
Sure.
That 7% on the grants, the revenue from that, where does it show on our consolidated, or would it be underneath the summary?
It's going to be spread out throughout all of our funds. So when we get into those funds, we'll show you where they're at. And the
Okay.
majority of that is $4 million in grants, and that's going to be in the Enid Municipal Authority. And we'll talk about that on Thursday night.
Okay, thank you.
Here we have revenue comparison. This is between this current year, our adopted budget for FY25, and what we're proposing for '26. So we look at general fund and EMA. We pull them out separately just to look because they're obviously the biggest part that we have. Everybody else kind of finds in the all remaining funds. So general fund, we have a revenue of $1.3 million more than when we budgeted for this fiscal year. These numbers are also without transfers. And the increases for general fund, we had use tax up for about $480,000, franchise overall up about $25,000, and interest is up just a little bit. We have a military planning commission grant that is also budgeted in the general fund, and that is to reimburse us for property purchase around Vance. So EMA's overall increase is 5.9 million on revenues from last year. We increased utility revenues about 2 million, and this is the $4 million grant that I was just mentioning in EMA, the congressional funding expected for the CAW fund program. And then we have sales tax that has a slight increase due to the use tax increase in general fund. So all remaining funds don't have much of an increase, but anything is we're appreciative of. We have slight increases in airport and in golf. in the Event Center Fund, and EPTA grant we have in there, and it's because of the increase in grants for 4 more buses and some software and parking lot. And then we have some decreases, CDBG grants, and then we don't have the trail grant in the capital improvement fund like we had for this year. So that obviously is a decrease in grant just in that area. Any questions on this slide? This is our budgeted expense history for 6 years. You can see that everything follows just about the same. This is in our categories. We have personnel, we have operations, and we have capital outlay, and then debt. So if you look at that, similar across the board, the personnel is in blue, and it holds about 37% for our projected year of the total expense. Operations are in red, and that holds about 33% of our total expense. Capital outlay in green is 11%, and then debt is in purple, and that's 19% that we're projecting for next year. So each year, over the last 6 especially years, everything's very similar in where the percentages lie, except there's one, the 22-23, we had a high operations, and we had lots of grants during that time in airport and CDBG. This is looking at it at in a different chart, showing the 37% for personnel, 33% for operations, capital outlay is 11%, and then debt is our 19%. Personnel overall, across all of our expenses, increased about $2 million. That is mainly from collective bargaining agreements we already have in place, and any changes to health plans. If someone had single last year and all of a sudden they had family, that can increase our expense up to $13,000 in 1 year just for one person. Travel, conferences, utilities, insurance, we have a pretty big jump in some areas due to some increases from our insurance company. And then operations shows that $3.5 million increase. Capital outlay is a $2.3 million increase, and debt services is just about the same as what we budgeted for this year. So total expenses still has an increase of the $7.7 million. Here we're showing the same comparison that we had on our revenue slide a couple of slides ago. This is just for the expenses. So general fund is up almost $900,000. We'll go over the general fund in detail a few slides from now. EMA is the 5.5 million increase, and we'll go over that on this Thursday in greater detail. But mainly is that our water production, since the CAW project was intended to come online in next fiscal year, we have a lot of increases in that department by itself, water production. It went up almost $4.3 million just for that one. And then the remaining funds only have a $1.2 million increase over everything else other than general fund and EMA. And each one of those we'll talk about either Thursday, and then the capital improvement funds we'll talk about the following Tuesday. These are our few unbalanced funds. We budget for 23 funds, and 19 we have balanced. We have 2 deficits, 2 surplus. The sanitary sewer fund is just projected. We have fund balance in the sanitary sewer fund. We have the fees budgeted to receive in Enid Municipal Authority at $4.2 million, but $2.2 million must cover the debt payments that we already have for that. So the only thing that we could use is the $2 million for projects. This year we have a few more projects over that, so we're just going to be using fund balance, and that's what the 900,000 is. Stormwater fund, we actually have a surplus, and that just is, we increased the fee coming in budget-wise, and we don't have as many projects to use that current year funding, so this is a surplus that just goes and adds to the fund balance. And then police fund has a deficit, but this is money for police and fire, actually. They both save up in their safety tax to do larger capital expenditures in future budget years. Just like police finished or are finishing their training center addition. That was one that they saved up for a couple of years. And police has the fund balance for their deficit. Fire fund is actually adding to theirs because they are doing the savings part right now for future capital expenditures.
That 471,000 deficit, that's a lot less than it was last year, wasn't it?
I think it's probably almost the same. We only had 3 or 4 funds affected last year also. The big thing is we had EMA and general fund that were balanced budgets last year, so that was significant. That was definitely different from in the past, so we had that, and I think everything went really smooth, and except, you know, to get that way, you have to cut some things, and if you don't have the money to do it, so, which is the unfortunate part, and then you have to prioritize, so definitely difficult situations, but it was about the same. It was either a little bit more or a little bit less. The
Several
overall.
$1 million when initially.
I think it was around 600,000
Yeah.
in the current year's adopted budget.
Okay, good.
So as I said, 23 funds are budgeted for the city. Tonight, we just wrapped up with the overview and the budget in full. So now we'll discuss some of the other individuals in yellow. So that's Health Fund, Golf, VDA, CDBG, Chisholm Trail, MPO, Sinking Fund. And that's what we'll do tonight. Then we'll meet again Thursday, and we'll go over the 9 funds identified in blue. And then the following Tuesday, we go over the capital improvement program, which are the 7 funds in green. That's also when we have the budget hearing, and that is the requirement by the Municipal Budget Act, which is, I talked about on slide 2. So we're talking about the general fund in more detail. Here's revenues when we're looking at without transfers of the $16.4 million that EMA will be transferring to the general fund for operations. So there's our increase again of $1.3 million. And I touched on that already a little bit. But sales tax has a slight increase, and that's due to the use tax increase. We're projecting on sales tax to be at $46.5 million by the end of the year. So you can see we only budgeted 40.7. So we still budget revenues very conservative. We don't change unless we have histories, yearly histories of those increases before we can actually show it in the budget, just to be conservative. Police fines had a slight increase, and we are budgeting those a little bit higher for next year. And franchise fees have a slight increase. OG&E had an increase, ONG had an increase, but cable franchise, actually, we're going to show a decrease for them for next year. And then the remaining under police fines, there's like 5, that's only about $46,000 of an increase. And so they're just kind of a few ups and downs between the total of all those groups. And then grants, we have that $250,000 increase for the Military Planning Commission. The remaining are similar to what we had for last year, so. Any questions on that? Here's our general fund expenses. We're actually seeing an increase of $2.9 million on our expenses, or a 4.8% increase. 20% overall increase of the 322. This is for agreements that are already in place, and an estimated increase for those that don't have agreement. We have 215 employees in this area for personnel. We were at 156 full-time. We went to 155 full-time. And we went from 12 part-time to 13 part-time. And we went from 49 seasonal to 47 seasonal. The change in the full-time was removing one assistant city attorney, and then the part-time increase was removing an intern, which affects the seasonal number, to a finance information specialist, information systems specialist. We look at our operations, it's only an increase of $375,000. This is where I said the travel, utilities, and insurance is our biggest increase there. Software has also increased quite a bit since last year, and we do have some new softwares in addition to just the rates increase. And then we increased demolitions for our community development department. This is also our first year for the sports and rec, and we have that expense in Parks and Recreation. Capital outlay is $2.2 million increase. This is our transfers out for equipment purchases and sales tax transfers to EMA based on the sales tax increase that we talked about earlier. And then we have operational transfers to other funds. We have that go to fire, police, golf, VDA, EEDA, and the MPO, and EPTA. And the EPTA number is the same. And then we have an increase for fire and police based on their operational expenses. And VDA, we actually used their fund balance to support the VDA fund this year, so we had to add that all the way back in for the almost 172,000.
Yes. So there's one more allotment to the school, but I think we're next in line.
This is another way to look at our general fund expenses. We have the base categories that I just talked about, but it also shows the difference in the transfer to fire, the transfer to police, the capital sales tax, and the cost sales tax that we send to EMA. So the top 20% is the personnel in blue, and then the 12% is our operations in red. The 18, and then we have a little 1% there in orange, that's the transfers to other funds. On the other side, sorry, that was 2%. And then, so the overall increase is still the same from the page before of $2.9 million. And the operations is the 12%. And the capital outlay increase of the $2.2 million. And then it shows fire and police. Police is the purple. Fire is the light blue, 15%. And the transfers to the other funds is the 2%. And then the 16 is the capital sales tax of the 1% and the cost sales tax of the 1% that goes from the general fund to EMA.
So basically, the breakdown that we're looking at now is what has happened or going on right now in the fiscal year of '25 and the projection of what might happen in '26. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, the numbers that are actually in here, we're talking about is what we're proposing for '26. Now,
Okay.
we look at all of our history, like especially our revenues. I have several years of history for revenues. Before we do any increases, we make sure that it's either had a 3-year average of an increase or a 5-year average of an increase before we actually put it in our budget book, just to make sure that we're covered and everything's good. Now, if we know that we have a rate increase in place, just like the utilities, when I'll talk about that Thursday night, but when we know we have a rate increase coming up in January, we put money in there for sure, even though we're still very conservative, but that we don't actually have to see history because we hadn't had the rate increase yet, so.
Okay.
Here's the first page. We have a 2-page of all of our list of departments. I'm not going to talk about every one of them, but I thought I'd just mention the ones that have kind of a larger amount of their variance from FY25 to FY26. Accounting has the part-time that was an HR intern, and they're now going to be the finance information system specialist, and that is in the accounting department. We had an increase to travel, and we had 2 new softwares, DebtBook and TRS. And then, of course, every one of these will have a personnel increase, slight increase. IT's increase, 79% of that is actually in software fees. And we have a new Microsoft Office 365 that will be implemented soon. This gives a page number of each of the departments if you want to look at those separately. And you can see not much other variances are that high. So here's our second page of departments. Our biggest one on this page is our Parks and Rec. We had several increases on this. They changed their seasonal lifeguards. They changed 12 of them to higher paying seasonal positions. 10 of them went to a lifeguard swim instructor, 1 went to assistant pool manager, 1 went to head lifeguard. And so that overall has a big chunk of that increase. Then we have the new sports and rec expense line that is $40,000. And they have a glass door replacement of $10,000, and then a porta potties increase. They said that are much higher than they used to be. Streets has, it's just the normal personnel, and then they had $30,000 that we needed to increase in utilities because of streetlights. Library, we have an increase in digital materials in our books line of $20,000. So of those, I kind of touched on the bigger items. Anybody have any questions before we move on? Now we'll talk about health. It's on page 87. So health fund is an internal service fund. Internal service funds are established to finance, administer, and account for departments or agencies of a government whose exclusive or nearly exclusive purpose is to provide goods or services to the government's other departments on a cost reimbursement basis. An example of that would be accounting doing financials for all the other departments. But health fund is definitely one of those. Department budgets have an expense line in their personnel category to pay the employer part of the insurance benefits into this fund. So this is Fund 14, and employees also contribute to their insurance premiums based on a payroll deduction. So the city provides medical, pharmacy, dental, vision, and wellness benefits to the employees. The numbers for the next budget year are analyzed based on 2 factors: CDV past claims history and industry trends. And we have a consultant that also meets with a committee to go over those kind of numbers. We do have a balanced budget, and revenues and expenses are very similar to what they were this year. We project that the fund balance end, it will be 4.1%. Any questions about health?
I do. So, it looks like to me it's come down a little bit in what you're proposing in '26
Yes.
on both the revenue and the projected expenditures. So did the employees see a reduction then in their, what's with help from their check for their,
No.
okay.
No, we typically set the rates based on our consultant, Holmes Murphy, who comes in several times and consults with us, with city staff, HR, finance, Scott, myself. We take a look at what claims history has been, and then as we move forward, we make our best guess on what it's going to be going forward. And so, while I don't recall the exact details of this one, I think overall the trend was not, we were not seeing the precipitous increases. And one of the things we've learned is we also don't raise the fees every year for employees. We typically go several years without raising them. This year, did we stay the same or did we raise it?
January, we had an
January.
increase, but it had
Okay,
been
January.
several years.
Yes, our health fund is based on a calendar year. So the expenses accumulate from January to December, and then we get, probably starting several months ago, we meet with Holmes Murphy and figure out what we're going to do. In this case, we figured out late last year what we were going to do. We implemented a new Plan B, which was called COOP. And so we think we have some good estimates in here for both revenues and expenses. And the employer bears the largest share. It's roughly anywhere from 80-20 to 85-15, something like that. So we have very good health care insurance. And but I think your question is if it went down, you know.
Well, and that makes sense if you keep it the same so that you can hopefully build revenue up in case we don't have enough the following year. But I just see the expenditures coming down from last year also, but yet we have an aging workforce. I mean, is that realistic, you think? I mean, obviously you do, or you wouldn't put it in there like that, or the consultants wouldn't have.
Right. I think as we went through it this year, we did implement a new plan in this year called COOP. It's our first year of it. We don't have really enough claims experience at this point to be confident, but that was the trend that it was showing, is it was going to overall save money. And one of the moves that we did when we implemented that plan was move to cost neutral for the city. So it didn't matter if the employee chose Plan A or the new COOP plan. We paid the same amount, which had not been the how it was structured in the past. So those are some factors that are causing it to look a little different right now, and we'll see how that plays out through this
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that kind of leads into a little more explanation. We have a self-funded healthcare plan, meaning that we pay the claims as they bill us. Blue Cross bills us on a monthly basis. Actually, I think, don't they just take it directly out of our account?
No,
Okay, all right. Well, in any event, they bill us every month. As part of our number that we get, both Holmes Murphy solicits the number from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've had Holmes Murphy as our consultant for probably 10+ years. They work directly with Blue Cross to get that same number. But there's a couple different numbers called aggregates. One of them is an aggregate of what they think the whole amount's going to be. And then we get some, I believe we have some insurance protection too if it goes over not only the total aggregate, but an individual aggregate too. I don't recall what the individual aggregates.
It's
what the other one-
$180,000.
180. So while we could be wildly wrong and have what you might say is a bad year, it would only be one bad year. And because we have built up many surpluses from the past, in fact, somewhere on one of these pages it tells us what the current health fund balance is, and
4.1 million.
$4.1 million. So it's nearly as much as our entire claims for 1 year. So we feel pretty good about our reserve level. We've been able to monitor things and monitor the ups and downs in healthcare. But long-term, no, healthcare is only going one way. But COOP was an effort to try to improve our offering to our employees and hopefully keep costs lower. And so Aaron was exactly right. We really won't know. We won't really even know until sometime probably late first quarter or second quarter next year how we did on the whole year. That's because we're talking about expenses from January to December. So,
Okay. That helps. It looked like you were showing that it's going to be trending down, and I've just never seen insurance trend down. So, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Next, we'll look at Meadow Lake Golf Course, page 96.
and that's a lot simpler than health funds, right, Michael?
Yes, much simpler. I'm just going to say a few things, and Michael's here if you have any questions for him. Balanced budget, we only increased revenue $21,000. We actually increased his golf fees a total of $42,000, but when his fees increase, we reduce the general fund transfer for him to operate so that he can cover his own expenses, if you want to say that, by his golf fees. So we did decrease $21,000 from the general fund transfer also. There's hardly any change, slight on personnel on increase for expenses. And he's got a little bit of an increase on capital outlay of almost $27,000, and he's still buying 2 new mowers. So I don't really have a whole lot else on this, so I will let Michael come up, or if you have questions.
I just want to know how much more revenue is going to come after we get that new sprinkler system.
I bet a bunch. I bet a bunch.
So you can see the revenue is up this year. That spike in the red line is projected for, a couple, close to $200,000 in over revenue this year. I think we're seeing the full year of our rate increase we did last year. So March 2024, we increased rates. So we're seeing a full fiscal year of rate increases. So that along with play in golf has been up. Golf's popular. I think you see it on social media, all the Instagram and all the golf brands. It's kind of a cool thing to do for kids. And we see a big explosion in kids out there. You can go out there. School season's kind of winding down. But you go out there at 4 o'clock after school, and there's 80 to 100 kids out hitting balls and playing golf. So it's really cool to see. But yeah, I think after we get the irrigation system, which that is going to start in 2 weeks. They're actually bringing in pipe, dropping that off this week. And so we're pretty excited to see. I had a meeting with the foreman a couple times. And so they'll start in 2 weeks. The first thing they'll do is go through and install the main lines on the property. And they'll try not to hit what we have, but we don't really have an existing as-built on our system. So as they hit our lines, they're going to fix it so we can keep watering until they get all their main lines in. So when they hit, we'll be there with fittings, and they'll try and fix it really quick. And if we need to water that night, I'll tell them, okay, let's button everything up and we'll water. Once they get the main lines installed, then they'll do our green complexes next, because it's really important for us to keep bent grass greens alive. But in the long run, I hope we'll be able to irrigate more efficiently. Irrigate coverage will be much better, and that'll help the course conditions and playability of the course too. The 2 pieces that I do have in the budget this year, we're asking for a new greens mower, a triplex reel mower. The one we have currently is 21 years old. It has 7,000 hours on the mower, which is an insane amount of hours. It's already got a replaced engine. We put a new engine in, I think, 6 years ago. So it's on its last leg, and it really needs to be replaced. And we're looking at options for a hybrid mower is the one that I've got budgeted for. And then the other one is for a utility tractor, a 60-horse tractor that pulls our rough mower. Our motor went down, the engine went down last fall, and we've actually got a tractor borrowed from the landfill currently right now until we get that. So those are the 2 pieces I'm asking for in the budget.
I hesitate to say anything because I'm such a bad golfer, but when you're out playing, whatever the course is, if the conditions get too dry and the like, I mean, it turns into such a negative just in terms of the chatter. So I would think with the new sprinkler services, this is, given a year, this has got to be a big uptick in terms of people wanting to play Mid-Lake.
Yes, I would think so. So we've had a lot of winter kill issues, so you get cart traffic, you get a drought going into the fall. In the last several years, and it's not just us, it's across Oklahoma, you see, and we have areas on our tee boxes and fairways that don't get any irrigation coverage because the system is a single row, and they'll, put in the 80s or early 90s, I think is when it was, and there's areas that don't receive water. So we'll put in, what they're putting in now, we'll have almost 900 sprinkler heads and cover all of the fairways into the rough on every hole. And so the turf conditions are going to improve, and I think we'll see more people come into play.
Michael, what are they telling you the completion date?
So right now, we're looking at late August. The golf course will never close. So we'll have 1 to 2 holes per day as they progress, that we'll route them around. And we're not having any events because of that, because it would slow them down. It would be difficult to say, okay, we're going to play 16 holes for this event. So no events until the fall, but they're planning on being finished end of August, so just under 4 months.
Will they go back and sod those areas where they've cut that out?
Yes.
Okay.
And it actually will fill in much quicker because they're doing it in season, so you're not going to be doing it in the wintertime where it's, so everything should actually, they actually won't sod the lateral lines they're doing because they'll be able to pull those in with a vibratory plow. That'll just be put sand in there, pack it in, and it'll fill in pretty quickly. The main lines where they're using a little bit wider bucket to dig it out, they'll put sod behind.
Okay.
And also the main lines don't go down the middle of the fairway. Those will go down the side and on the edge of our properties, so it won't disturb as much for the 8-inch, 6-inch mains we're putting out.
Cool.
And we did just host.
Obviously, you don't know where I hit the ball.
We just, and this is on a much smaller scale than the sports complex, but we hosted the 5A boys regionals on Friday of last week, and then the week before the 2A girls regionals. And I know the 5A boys, the closest city was El Reno, and I think every school came in. We had 90 kids, coaches, spectators, and they all stayed the night in hotels, played practice rounds on Sunday, and then played on Mondays or on Fridays.
Wonderful.
Great.
Michael, you
did
want
a
to tell?
great job out there with a very challenging system. So
Right.
good job.
I appreciate it.
Good job. I'm sorry someone said something.
Michael, do you want to go ahead and tell everyone the improvements made on the driving range?
Yeah, so we put in artificial turf hitting mats on the back of the range with the increased traffic and play from not only the kids, but the public in general. Our driving ranges get a beating over the wintertime. So the city staff helped us pour concrete. It's a 6-foot wide, 150-foot length of artificial turf. And it's not just a thin turf. It's actually, it's got an 1.25 inch mat on it. So it's soft. It's not, you don't feel like you're hitting off of concrete. So our crew installed the artificial turf over the top of the concrete. And I'm hoping that, it says 7 years of lifespan, so I'm hoping it lasts 5 to 7 years, but it's going to do a wonder for keeping the turf alive. So we'll be on the mats just in the wintertime, and then on the summertime and in season, they'll be able to hit off grass, and it'll be in much better condition.
Very good.
That's cool.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. If there are no other questions.
We could break.
Yeah. Jennifer, I think 6:20, I think I want to break right here, and we'll come back on the regular agenda and finish this up.
Okay,
Is that all right?
sure.
Okay. All right. With that being said, we will adjourn. We'll start back up at 6:30.